Kalispera. Good afternoon. Welcome to our first startup session, but also the first session of the entire Panorama event. We are delighted to have Cheryl Edison with us for the second year running, who will be talking to us live from San Francisco. Cheryl is a Sorry, that was a technical issue here. Cheryl is a serial entrepreneur and also provides advisory to startups, Fortune 100 corporations, and many more. She also travels around the world and delivers keynotes and workshops. Now, before we start, please feel free to send us your questions in the section Q&A. You can send them in Greek if you like, and I will translate them for Cheryl. So, Cheryl, welcome to Panorama. It's a great pleasure to have you with us. I understand it's 2 o'clock in the morning there.
It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I love being here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. So, Cheryl, the floor is yours. You can start.
Thank you so much, Dimitris. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. I want to welcome you to my home in San Francisco, California. We're going to be spending about an hour together. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to ask them. You know that you can post them, and Dimitris will just let me know and we'll immediately answer them. This is not a formal presentation. We're here to serve you. So let me begin by opening my presentation and begin telling you some things about how to fundraise. Let's begin. I'm going to share my screen. And I'm just going to wait a moment for the computer and everything to catch up. There you go. So today we will be speaking about business like a boss, from idea to how fundraising truly works. I'll open by letting you know just a little bit about me, although Dimitris told you some things. You know, I began my work many years ago. Let's see if I can get this little thing to work. Here we go. Now it's working. There we are. So I've worked in 57 industries and on most continents in the world. As this slide progresses, you'll see some of the countries I've worked in and some of the brands that I've been honored to have engagements with. I was in Greece just last year and had a wonderful time at the Panorama event in Athens. And we were to work together again in March, but unfortunately, a few things came in the way. But here we are now together, and I look forward to speaking to you about some topics that we would have spoken about together then. One of the things that I can tell you about having worked around the world is that the ecosystems for entrepreneurs, although they're different in every country, have many similarities. And so I will be speaking with you today about the global economy and how things work all over the world. There will be some differences in the city where you are or the region where you're working. But in general, when a business is thought about and then launched and becomes a global business, there are some patterns that are the same everywhere. So we'll be speaking about those today. One of the things that's really important is to begin by thinking about a problem. So when you have a problem that is actually a big problem, that means that you have a big opportunity. And so many years ago, back in mid-2015, you know, the United Nations came out with the Sustainable Development Goals, and that gave many entrepreneurs an opportunity to actually point at a problem, number it, and name it. When you do that, You allow more people to connect to the problem that you see that is important. And when more people connect what it is that you're focused on, that makes your business grow better, faster. Think about it for a minute. If you want to come up with an idea that's a good business idea, the most important thing is why. Why do you believe that that's a good business idea? And when you can link that why to a greater purpose in the world, like these United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, that allows many more people to understand you more quickly. So that's why these goals become very important, particularly for new entrepreneurs. Now, we can't really speak today as entrepreneurs without speaking a little bit about how the coronavirus has affected us all. This map that you will see is really just a mapping of how the coronavirus has been. It shows that it's all over the world, and it's not that anyone in the world is alone having experienced it. We're in this together. And so in this way that we are together in this, it is creating a much stronger awareness of how we can all work together. It doesn't matter what country you're in right now. We are all in this together around the world. And although it's a very difficult moment for everyone, it's also a moment in which we can actually reach out to one another through the digital world with much more simplicity, because we all are aware that it's one of the only ways we can actually connect now. So whereas before we thought that we were in the digital age, actually now we are. We truly are. How many people in this call today, in this video conference today, are using Zoom calls more? Whereby, or maybe Facebook, speaking with one another through video conference in ways that maybe you weren't before. So really, we have launched into the true digital age as a result of this coronavirus. This photo illustrates winnowing. And the reason I'm bringing up this concept of winnowing is because winnowing is the act of taking rice and shaking it. And as it is being shaked, the rice itself becomes available. And that is actually what the global economy is doing right now. We are being shaken, and all of the chaff is being released. And those businesses that are really at the top, that really have value, are becoming more visible. So today, as we speak, what we really want to think about is, how can you have your business, your idea, become more visible? And the value of what you're thinking and the value of what you bring become more available to more people. And you got to shake it up sometimes to get to see that true value. So don't be afraid of a little shaking. Shaking can sometimes create an opportunity. I'm going to go through just some very brief slides to talk about how this coronavirus affects the economy and what it means to us as entrepreneurs. It'll be a very quick review. You see this shape, the way the coronavirus affects people. That same shape goes on each time from country to country to country. That's been the effect. It begins, the cases begin to duplicate, then there are more, then there are more, and then it tapers off. And again, beginning, rising, falling, rising, falling. What does it mean to us as entrepreneurs who have an idea, who may need fundraising and want to launch that idea into the world? Well, let's think about it like this. As you begin to have this arch of the virus, it affects the country in the economy that way. So at the same time that it may be rising and falling, it has the opposite effect on the economy. But why is that important for us? It's important for us because it follows through and goes up. It doesn't just dip and stay down. It goes down and then goes back up. Very much in the same pattern that it came in, it goes back up. So we as entrepreneurs must keep our minds focused on that next moment, on what will be happening next. Because we as entrepreneurs are able to imagine what can be and to bring it into reality. That is our role as entrepreneurs, to create the reality in the day-to-day behaviors of all of the people. That's what we're good at. We solve problems and we bring them into reality as new solutions. So again, shake it up. Don't be afraid to shake it up. And be one of those that rises to the surface. Be one of those that shows your value, even if you get shook up a little bit or a lot. Look towards the future and the value. That's what we're here for. So how does it all work? There are 5 steps to building any business. Let's get into talking about it. The first step is to have an idea. We have to be aware where we are in this process. And since there's only 5 steps, once we're aware of where we are in the process, we can then relate to how we must move next. Number 1, idea. Number 2, is it a product or a service? What are you creating? This is the moment in which many entrepreneurs make a mistake. We think that we're building a product when actually what we're offering is a service. We think we're offering a service when actually it's a combination of a product and a service business model. So get really clear, what is the value that you're offering, and name it that way, because that way people can know what you're offering and they can come to you because they will recognize what you're offering. So be really careful to name what you're doing so that people can identify that you're offering what they want. Imagine there is pent-up demand for what it is that you're about to offer, and look for the way to speak about it so that people can be magnetized to you and what you're selling. The next thing is to measure client response. As we measure client response, what does that mean? Well, I have to let you know that many first-time entrepreneurs believe that measuring client response is to ask people that love them, do you like it, Mom? Hey, Dad, do you think it's good? Hey, best friend, uncle, teacher, do you like what I'm doing? Generally speaking, the people that love you will tell you that they love you and they love what you're doing. That's not measuring client response. They may not be in your target audience. They might never be someone who would buy your product or service if it was from someone else, not you. So to measure client response, what you have to do is be courageous enough to offer your product or service for sale. And you know, the moment that you know you're in business is when you have the first sale. Because when one person buys once, you're in business. So that's all it takes. And the more people buy, the more you know how much they like what you're doing. And that way you can measure the client response by how much they buy. Commerce, as you know, in Greece, where the first coins ever were, created the land of commerce. Measuring income, measuring purchases is a way to measure whether people like it, measuring client response. So that's what we have to do. What happens next? Pivot. Pivot is when we discover, oh, what we thought we were offering is not exactly what people want. So we have to move towards what people actually want. And we have to be aware enough to be willing to turn towards what people really want, moving from our core of what we're offering towards the client response. And then finally, we have to see, are we going to continue this business? Are we going to persevere, or will we exit? And that is the moment in which we know whether we're actually going to sell the business or whether we're going to continue and run it for the rest of our lives. So now please think very carefully. These are the 5 steps. We're now going to use these 5 steps as a matrix against all the steps of fundraising. Do you have any questions before I go on? Let me look here at the Facebook page, the YouTube page, and see if you have any questions. Let's just take a little look. Demetrius, do we have any questions or are we good? Doesn't seem like any questions. Seems like we're okay. I'm scrolling down. Nope, no questions. Okay, fine. Let's go on. Let's go on. Okay, so let me see. Here's what happens next. But don't be afraid to ask questions. Interact with us. Let us know what you're thinking. We're here to answer questions. And I know Demetrius is ready to jump in. So what are the dynamics? We talked about the idea. So now I'm going to go more quickly because you already know the matrix, right? The idea is when you identify how the problem and the solution make the fit. Does it solve a meaningful problem? Now you can look on the screen and you can see everything that I'm saying. So it makes it pretty easy to follow. Once we get to the product and service, we're trying to figure out who will love it passionately. We want to know the metrics. We're in the moment of validation. Discovery, validation, that people will actually respond to it. And finally, we're looking with fresh eyes to understand how do people really respond to it and how would the pivot be if we choose to pivot. In the pivot, we're preparing to scale the business. We're looking at each touch point to see what it is that we can do to make our sales more fast and more easy. At this point, we usually evolve to business model 2.0. That's the movement towards that business that it really wanted to be when you first had the idea, which is often a little bit different than you originally imagined. It's usually a little different. At this point, in the pivot is when the financing usually happens. So notice, it doesn't usually happen over here when you just have the idea. It doesn't happen when you first have the product. It doesn't even usually happen when you just have a few sales. It usually happens. The best moment to seek funding is when you're in the pivot. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in the next slide. Here in this moment, what we're really looking at is we're looking at whether you're going to build the business now or you're going to persevere and exit. Exit really means that you sell the whole business. That's what exit means. Okay, I'm going to pause a minute just to see. I'm going to take a look if you have any questions. No questions. Okay, very good. I'm going to move along, and now we're going to talk about how the funding moves through each of these stages. And as it moves through each of these stages, how much control you can expect to lose. Because funding is the process of taking in money and letting go of a portion of your company. And letting go of a portion of your company means letting go of a portion of control. So now moving right along, if you'd like to take a look at the same process, if you do gigs, it's the same thing. Discovery, you identify your service, you measure the client response, you begin to sell, you decide if you need to adjust your pricing or the platform. See, it's the same process, whether you're selling yourself as gigs or whether you're making a big business. If you're a single person enterprise, it's the same thing. Here also you have the opportunity to persevere or exit. You could still sell the business if you began as a solo entrepreneur. You still could. You could build an agency. You could build a team around you. The gentleman who built my website is a guy named Victor. His agency is Nox, N-O-X-X, and we just launched a new website today for you, which I should tell you about because there's free resources there, CherylAEdison.com. And you can go check out our beta at CherylAEdison.com. And in the resources page, there's all kinds of free resources, and we'll keep putting new resources there. And that was launched by Victor and his team, but I'm sure he began as a gig entrepreneur doing things on his own. He makes great websites. Okay, onward. What happens? You're getting familiar with this, right? Idea looks like old stuff now. You've seen it 3 times. What happens? Usually at the idea stage, you're self-funded. You typically are going to do what you can do while you're in another area of making money to live. So usually when you're in the idea stage, you're using things like credit cards or personal loans, or your friends and family are helping you. Usually in this time, when you move from your kitchen counter to the coffee shop to a co-working space in the old paradigm of doing business, in those moments, you will be adding more power, adding more people to your team. And typically you can expect that in this time of the business growth, when you're testing out your idea and beginning to figure out how to build, whether it's a product or a service, you can expect to let go of about 20% of the company. That would be pretty typical. The next thing that usually happens is you're building the product or the service. And the types of money that you would usually take in are grants. You might do some crowdfunding because you might sell in advance, you know, like Kickstarter. I'm going to drink a little water. You might enter into an incubator or an accelerator. If you do that and you enter into an incubator or an accelerator, you know, sometimes they'll ask you for a percentage of your business. Sometimes they don't. Like I've been working with an incubator accelerator at SAP, and SAP, they don't take a portion of your equity, but many incubator accelerators do. They'll take up to 8%, and that's considered normal. So take a look here. We've got discovery. In validation, you might end up giving up about 8%. So now you're at 28% that you've given up. In that stage, you also may have added team members, and you may have shared. Perhaps you've added a co-founder. So that would also mean you'll let go of some more control and some more equity. Measuring the client response, you're also doing sales, but the promotions cost you money. Strategic alliances, government programs. This is when angel funding happens. Now I'm going to begin to talk to you about the names of the different rounds. So over here in IDEA, it's typically called seed or the friends and family round. By the time you get to the measure client response, that's usually called an angel round. An angel round tends to be less than $100,000. And it can be even much, much less. It can be $10,000. But an angel round is really someone who's an angel to you because they're giving you money when you haven't really created value in the company. And so they're taking a big risk. The most important thing to speak about here is this. The further into the process you go, the further into the process from idea to really getting into sales and really getting through the pivot in which you're right on track, building the scalability of your business, it's a higher risk for investors, and you've built less value in your company. And so every time you take money in, it's going to cost you more. So that's why it's better to get through the process further so that you have more value in your company, so that when you give up part of your company for cash, you give up less. That's the core concept of how fundraising works. What happens next? We're in the pivot, business model 2.0. You may up the rate. And at this point, you're looking for your strategic alliances and how you can make business with other people. Because something that first-time entrepreneurs many times don't imagine, and which I'd like you to be aware of, is that your idea, which is coming from your fresh notion of the world, may be very valuable to a company that's existing that would really do well to ally with you, to connect with you, even to become very firmly connected with you. And in that way, you get the resource of that company and they get the value of what you're bringing. So many times in the fundraisers that we do here in Silicon Valley, and I work with a number of organizations, and all we do is we receive pitch decks, we consider them, we look at them very carefully, we interview the team, we interview the CEO, and then we think about whether or not we want to come together with them, raise money for them, and that entire process usually also brings more strategic alliances to them. Because with strategic alliances that are bigger brands, it causes the new company to sort of co-brand into that older branded name, that older, bigger company, and it sort of co-ops their value and causes us to be able to raise more money for the new company. So it's really important, as quickly as possible, to make strategic alliances, to blend your business model with others and not just stand alone. When you're raising your efficiency, you could lose as much as 30%. Because sometimes in this moment of the fundraise, when you're taking in seed money, see, now we're in seed, friends and family, angel, another seed. That seed round can really take a chunk of your equity. At this point, you're moving along into the persevere or exit stage, when most companies that are really paying close attention are ready to do a real raise. The first real venture capital raise is called Series A. The Series A, which many companies try to avoid for as long as possible, is the first time that you're actually raising a real amount of money that could really drive your business growth. I mean, it's usually in the multiple millions. And many times people, like the way we raise funds for companies, we don't really want to raise less than 3 million, 5 million, 10 million. And sometimes companies will come to us and say, hey, we want to raise 100 million. So it's actually something I want to speak to you about very seriously. And I'm hoping that you will hear me out on this point. When you're raising money, the most important thing is to raise money late enough in your company value building up that you hold equity as much as possible, you hold control as much as possible. But when you are raising money, raise enough money. Don't go and raise some little puny amount of money and then have to go back and try to raise again. Because if you do that and you keep going back and going back and going back, you'll spend your entire business time raising money instead of building your business, instead of focusing on sales, because fundraising takes a huge amount of time. In an upcoming slide, I'm going to show you how the fundraising process works, and it takes a huge amount of time. Many CEOs don't want to do fundraising because it's very hard to run a business and do a fundraise at the same time. Also, the people that you raise money from prefer to give you a big chunk of money. They prefer to give you access to $3 million, $5 million, and then based on milestones, places that you arrive to of achievement, then you draw down X amount of money. So that's usually how it goes. Let's say you're raising $5 million. Well, when you hit a milestone of selling X amount, or you hit the milestone of X level of development of your product and service, then that milestone causes you to be able to draw down what's called a tranche. And a tranche is an amount of money that you take from the total amount that you raised. So that's the beginning of how it works. Let me look again and see if you have any questions for me. Any questions? Nobody has questions. Amazing. I'm going to refresh just to see. No questions. Quiet people. All right. Very good. Let's keep moving. let's keep moving. The very first thing that you're going to do when you're going to go after fundraising is you're going to build a pitch deck. The pitch deck in Silicon Valley and around most of the world looks like this. It's very simple. It has 10 pages. You open with what is it? Why does it matter now? And each of these bubbles indicates a page in the pitch deck. And now I want to draw your attention to something very important, which is that in the bottom of the screen, you'll see that we've prepared a gift for you. And that gift is this slide plus a full questionnaire that you'll receive if you go to that address. So I'll call it out and I'll slow down very just a little bit here. And maybe my team is actually on the YouTube page. Alexandra, would you cut and paste this URL so that people can click it and they can get a copy of how to build your pitch deck? How to build your pitch deck. Maybe Eugene might be there too, and he might be able to post. Let's see. Maybe people can't even post. I know they will post if they can. Let's see what happens. I'll refresh. I'll watch for just a minute. I don't know. We'll give it a minute. Well, I'm going to call out the URL just to make sure that you get it, because I would love for you to be able to have it. And I don't know, maybe we can give it to you. Looks like nobody can post. All right, well, I'm sure you're checking that out. All right, let's keep moving. So the free download is at https://bit.ly/Panorama Cheryl. So let's see. And I'm just going to ask right here if anybody on my team is able to do it. I'm sure they'll answer me back. Okay, so let's keep going. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, Eugene, for being here in this workshop with us today. Okay, let's see here. So now what happens? How does it really work? So here's what happens. You start by having your pitch deck, and when you have your pitch deck and you're ready to start showing it to people, you move to the very next stage. The next stage is that you want to build your data room. Okay. Excuse me. I just want to call something out to our lovely tech team, Dimitrios and the tech team, Yanis. I've been told by my team that the chat is disabled, so no one can ask questions and no one can actually put anything in the chat. So if you want to open the chat, that would be great, because nobody can post any questions. What do you say? Do you want to do it?
Cheryl, it's Dimitris.
Yes.
We are getting some questions within the Whova application, because that's the idea. We would like to have the questions through the Whova platform. And we have already received 5 questions. Normally, we're not supposed to have questions through YouTube, but I will check it out.
Do you want to ask me any of the questions that people are asking?
Sure, yes. Okay, the first question has 2 votes. It says, we are talking about when we talk about the idea, are we referring to an idea of an existing product or service, or are we talking about innovation as well, about something completely new?
Okay, so an idea, this is a very interesting question. So maybe what I should do is back up just a moment. Let me back up here. So an idea can come to you in one of 3 ways as a new business. The first way, and the way that most people think of a business idea, is that they're thinking of a completely new innovation. Nobody has ever done it before, and it's 100% new, and it's a new category launch. Nobody's ever thought of it before. And I've been involved with a lot of new category launches. It's actually kind of one of my specialties. So when you think of something completely new, it's actually a lot harder to build and a lot harder to sell because nobody even knows what it is. They don't understand it. They don't know how to relate to it. The second way that people have business ideas, the second way, is that they take things that already exist and then they put them together in a new way. And in that way, they come up with a new business idea. So as an example, that would be, say, for instance, Uber. People are already using their cars. People already have cars. And there's already the concept of taxis, but they put together people with their cars and the idea of a taxi, put it together, voila, Uber. That's a similar way that Airbnb came along, right? People have their houses. There's already been hosteling, B&Bs, hotels, put together the idea of I have my house, I let you use it or part of it, bada boom, a new business idea. So repurposing creates faster value because you don't have to build as much. The third way that people have businesses is that they decide to sell something of themselves, and it's just a straight service. So they're basically putting themselves inside an existing platform, like Upworks, which is another Greek company, right? So Upworks or Fiverr, or you sell something on Amazon. So actually, it's not something new that you're selling, but what you're doing is you're beginning to sell something in a platform. And so that, again, is kind of like number two, putting things together, but it's just selling into an existing platform, which is a new business for you. Does that answer the question, Dimitris?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Great.
I'll ask one more before I go on.
Sure. Okay. The second question I have here is, it says, hello, firstly, I would like to thank you for this beautiful presentation. In your opinion, is it better to start something alone or to make a team or to form a team? That's the question.
Team.
A team.
Absolutely team. And so I'll tell you about that. It's hard to start a business. It's very tough. And if you have a team, if there's a dynamic, it is much easier. And since we're in a presentation on fundraising, I would say that 90%, somewhere between 85 and 90% of all those companies that are funded have a team. It's not just one person, it's a team. Because at the end of the day, the investor is actually not investing in the product, not investing in the service, they're investing in the team. And so if it's just you alone, wow, I mean, that puts a heck of a pressure on you. And it's much more likely to get funded when you have a team. And it's much more likely to succeed. How about
Great.
that, Demetrius? Anything else? You want to ask one more and then we go on?
One more. Okay, great.
Okay, one more.
Okay. Let me see. All right. It says, how easily an entrepreneur can interpret the right moment to actually exit his own enterprise?
What's the right moment to exit an enterprise?
To interpret the right moment, to understand, to feel that this is the right moment to exit. That's the question, I think.
Okay. So let me talk to you for a minute about that. So let's say it like this. Here's an easy way to think about it. There are external forces and there are internal forces. And when there is an internal moment in which you no longer want to run the business, then you better move and sell it as quickly as possible, because if you don't want to run the business, the value will very likely go down from there. And ideally, you want to sell the business at its highest possible value while you still want to sell it and you still want to run it. Because when you get past that moment that you don't want to run it, your energy brings the company down, and it's very hard to build value in the company or even to keep it going well if you don't want to run it anymore. So if you notice you don't want to do it anymore, you have got to either bring in new teams so that you reinvigorate it. You have got to change your idea of what the company does so that you become interested in it again, or you have to immediately look, here's another snap, you have to immediately look for who to sell it to, because otherwise you're going to lose value and you'll lose your investment. In terms of the external forces, basically there are cycles in business in which the company has more value in a certain market or less value in a certain market. You can think about it in the way that you might think about how it's easier to sell bathing suits in the summer. It's easier to sell a bathing suit in the summer than in the winter. A bathing suit has a lower value in the winter. So it's like that. There are always external forces. If you are in a moment in which everybody wants to have a game set in their house, well, heck, it's a great moment to own a gaming business. It's not a good moment to let go of a gaming business. But as an example right now, if everybody's in lockdown, it might not be a great moment to own a coffee shop. But if you think about it, you have to look at what's happening in the external force, what's happening in you, and then you match the two. So you want to sell at the highest moment. And that's a good part of how you know when to sell.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Does that help?
Yes, definitely, I think.
Yep. Do you want to ask a follow-up to that, or shall I go on?
I think you should go on, yes.
All right, I hear consideration. Was there something else you wanted to say or ask?
Well, we have 2 more questions, but I think maybe we should carry on, and maybe we have time. We can I can address them to you maybe later on.
Well, but you know what? It sounds to me, if I can read your voice without seeing your face, that you'd like to ask them. So come on, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Great.
Here we go.
Okay. What about a business idea that solves a meaningful, a meaningful problem, but this problem refers to only one country or two? Why does it stand less chances of funding?
Well, I have a very hard time believing that it only serves one country or two. I have a very hard time believing that. I would like to know more from that person. I think that that may be a mistake. Ask them, what is the business? I can't believe that. You know, the human condition is global. So it's very unlikely that it only serves one or two. It's just really unlikely. Can they ask you something further?
Well, I don't know if that person can follow up. I don't know.
Okay, so let me try to answer the question as it is. It's okay. Let's try it like this. Let's just go with it. Let me say this. Every country has its own startup ecosystem in whatever moment it's in. In that way, no matter if your product or service will only serve one country or two, which is very unlikely, but if it's possible, even then, there are funders who are looking for you. So that's the attitude. It's not that you're just alone out there looking for money and you're alone and no, it's that they're looking for you while you're looking for them. So you just have to kind of like put yourself in the position where they can find you.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl.
Okay, and one more.
All right, the final question that we have so far, it says, thank you for the presentation. I would like to ask what kind of executives are needed in every stage in order to help us understand if we are doing well or not?
Oh, executives meaning people.
I suppose so, yes. Maybe
Okay.
advisors, something like that.
Or advisors? Oh, okay. Wow, that's a big question. Okay, let's see here. It's a good question. So the first thing is you need someone in the CEO position. So you have to have somebody who leads, right? Who basically has the vision. So the CEO has the vision of what's going to happen. Then usually in this moment in the world, you're going to need a CTO. The CTO is somebody who's basically working with the technology. Now, doesn't have to be. You could also just do CEO, CMO. And that's because let me give you what they stand for, right? CEO is Chief Executive Officer. So that's the person who guides the vision of the company. The CTO is the Chief Technical Officer. The CMO is the Chief Marketing Officer. And these days, because marketing is so integral to the sales and to the building of a company, many times the CEO is an ex-CMO, because being able to distinguish your product or service and make it stand out against other products and services and sell turns out to be a very important piece of the equation. So these days, CEOs are often CMOs. If not, a CEO has to have someone in the CMO position who creates the go-to-market strategy, who understands how this new business is going to develop. Because if they hire somebody like that as a vendor, it can get very expensive. The other thing that sometimes happens though, excuse me, is that they'll take that person as an advisor. So if you think of it this way, if the top three roles are Chief Executive Officer, Chief Technology Officer, and Chief Marketing Officer, there's two more here, which is COO, which is Chief Operating Officer. That's the one who runs the operations, and CFO, which is the person who's running the numbers. Those are the five. Those are the big five. So again, CFO, Chief Financial Officer, COO, which is the Chief Operating Officer, CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, CTO, Chief Technology Officer, and finally the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer. In most companies that succeed, 3 people start, and those 3 people cover off all 5 roles. So that's the answer to your question. And if there are any of those roles that they don't have and they're not bringing them in as a co-founder, then they, as quickly as possible, bring them in as an advisor, as quickly as possible.
Great, Cheryl. That's the questions that we have so far. I understand we have 12 minutes. I hope this is enough for you to complete your presentation.
I'm going to go very quickly. Here we go.
Okay, great. Thanks.
And you know, if we don't get it all done, there is another day, right? We can always do another day sometime. Here we are. So here's what we're going to talk about now. This is the process of going through the fundraise. I'm going to stop here for a moment. Pitch deck, then you build your data room. Then what you want to do is you want to explore, weight, and prioritize the funding types. You target and pursue the options. You're going to go on and you're going to refine your approach. You're going to update the materials and you're going to continue to think about what the potentials are. Let's stop here a moment and look at what is really happening here. The process of going for fundraising is the process of preparing materials and testing and learning if what you've prepared is actually going to work. It's just like building a business. It's the same. What happens is you're building a product, which is the pitch deck. And the pitch deck represents everything in your company. And the only way you know if it's going to work is if you go through that same process. It's your idea is that the pitch deck is good. So then you build it as the deck. Sometimes people do a video as well. And then you measure client response, step number 3. And what does measure client response mean? It means you show it, you listen to how people respond to you, you refine the materials based on what you learn. It's just like building a company. There you are in step number 4, pivoting, right? You're pivoting. You're changing the things that you're saying so that the people who have the funds are more interested in you. And then you're presenting again and you're learning what's going on. The next part that is really important that I'm going to get through as quickly as I can is that once you've gone through a few of these rounds and you've identified the different types of people who could be interested, you'll eventually get people who are interested at some level. And you begin to negotiate the options. And you'll produce special documents for the fundraise process. Eventually, you're going to decide, are you going to continue on the path of seeking funding, go, no go, go, no go, for each of the people that you're speaking to, or are you going to go back and just focus on sales? Because that's what's in the balance. You either go for funding, or you go for sales, or you try to do both at once. Both are ways that you're feeding your company funds, money, so that you can continue to run the business and continue to build the business. So they work in very similar ways. I'm going to move right along to the next slide now, just because we're running out of time. Negotiating is a very important thing to take a look at. Now, look, I have been in Greece just once, but when I was there, I'm just going to say the best negotiators in the world, I believe, are in Greece, because everybody negotiates everything. So it's amazing. But anyway, I'm going to talk to you just quickly about how the process works in the global sense out in the world. The first thing that you do is you want to look at, what do I need? The higher my need, the less power I have. Time, how quickly do I need it? The more quickly I need it, the less power I have. So again, need and time. The more need, the less time I have, the less power I have. So again, high need, less time, I'm in trouble. So how does it work? Well, who cares about what it is that you're negotiating about? Do I care? Does anybody care? I don't care. Well, that makes it a low-level priority. Is it a nice to have or a must have? So take a look at this very quickly and notice if it's a must have and if it's low time and it's a high need, I'm in a very bad negotiating position. What must I do to get into a better negotiating position? I need to look at their position. How are they in this same quadrant? Who around them cares? Do they even care about what we're negotiating about? Is it a nice to have for them that I'm negotiating with them about, or is it something they really need and they must have? So once we can see where they square up with us in the negotiation, what their gotta haves are and what are their nice to haves, we can begin to look at how to create a win-win opportunity, which looks like this. If we're talking about stuff and we continue focusing on talking about stuff, generally the conversation will become very quickly adversarial. As soon as we can get into a cooperation, into relationship, that's when we can find where the opportunities are to create a win-win opportunity by solving problems. Now, this is a whole long conversation to have about how all of this works. And I'm going to move along because I see I only have about, 5 minutes left. And I think we're going to go until 5 after the hour. So maybe we have 10 minutes. But the notion of negotiating in the process of funding is extremely important because you want to look for win-win situations with the people that are funding you, because together you're going to be solving problems, hopefully for a long time to come. And so you want to get into a good relationship with them. How is value built? Well, the value in your company is not just built by the thing. It's also built by the intangible value. As you can see from this slide, the value of the company was previously built by what the thing was. You can see here in 1975, what the thing was 83% of what the value of the company contained. By the time we got here, all the way to 2015, the actual value of the company is based on what's intangible. The intangible value is really built on the brand. And that's why the CMO position becomes so important. The CMO position is so important because it's the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, that drives the brand value. So that's really important to build while you're building your product and your service together. How do we understand that? Well, we understand that quickly by seeing this, and I'm going to go through this very quickly. This is a polyester t-shirt. I know from being in Greece that this is really cheap in Greece. It's like $5, $5 US, very cheap. If you go to from polyester t-shirt to a cotton t-shirt, it's like double the price. In Greece, it's like $10. But if I tried to buy this, even in Greece, the value would be like $200, even though it's still a cotton t-shirt. So that's how brands create value in the company. There's an ongoing way in which having the brand attached to the product elevates the value of the product. So let's move on into the last couple of slides here. I'm not even going to talk through this. I'm just going to let you know that everywhere in the world, everything that is bought or sold based on fear, satisfaction, and happiness. So the more that you can focus on whether your product or service is actually addressing, creating a solution in relation to fear, or whether it's providing a level of satisfaction, love, and belonging, raising someone's esteem, or driving to the very pinnacle of a brand value, which is happiness, that's where all brands and all products and all services in the world interact all over the world. And those products and services that are able to touch every single point in this pyramid work best around the world. And they do that through their messaging and their positioning, in addition to what the product or service actually is. This business model innovation deck will be on the website. You can go and get it if you like. So if you go to CherylAEdison.com, we've put it there. You can pick it up, you can look at it, and you can see the entire range of what happens as you're building your business, end to end. These are all the steps that you go through. So feel free to go there to CherylAEdison.com. That's the beta website we built for you. And it'll be there, I don't know, I guess it'll be there for a couple of weeks.
Cheryl,
Yep.
This is Dimitris. I'm sorry, but we have only 1 minute left and we have to be very strict with our time because the next one will start in 5 minutes, the next panel, and our tech guys need to prepare. So I'm afraid we have to wrap it up. But I suggest that in the Whova community, you can set up your own virtual meetup, maybe tomorrow or during these 5 days, and you can have a chat with people later on. If that's something that you would like to do, maybe tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday, I will explain to you how you can do it later on. But I'm afraid we have to wrap it up. It was so useful. I think people will have appreciated it. And just one last comment from you, Cheryl.
Perfect timing, Dimitris. This was the last slide.
Excellent.
And I'm very happy that we were able to complete both the presentation and we were able to come together and answer all 5 questions. Thank you very much and have a great rest of the conference.